All right, welcome back to the Bitcoin Treasuries podcast. I'm Tim Kotzman. I'm here with Sid Barwani. Sid, thanks for the time today. Appreciate you joining us.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for having me.
And happy Saturday.
Same to you.
Do you want to start with telling us about your background and your story at JetKing?
Sure. So, hi, I'm Siddharth Barwani. I am part of this company, JetKing, which is almost a 70-year-old business outfit. I had the I am the CFO of the business and the joint managing director, and I was a part of this business for the last 18 odd years. And JetKing as a company is a tech first business, right? And we created um, a strategic move into Bitcoin recently. So just a history around that is we used to be manufacturers of radio at one stage in the 60s and 70s. Then we started manufacturing televisions in the 80s and 90s. And in the 2000s is when we started training in IT and IMS. At its peak, we were training almost 100,000 students across India and Vietnam. And that's when COVID came into in 2020 when COVID came in. Almost 200 centers at that stage. Business went down by almost 70%, and we were at the end of the line. And we said, there's two things we can do. One is we can look at building back the legacy business, which is an offline training center, or we can look at a slightly more futuristic business that can bulletproof the company as a whole. And that's when we looked at Bitcoin as an asset class, and that's where it started from in March of 2022. I cannot hear you.
Oh, thank you. The mute button will get you. That's the lesson learned. And now, so JetKing is India's first publicly traded company to adopt a Bitcoin standard.
That's right.
Can you walk us through why you decided to adopt Bitcoin?
Right. So if you see, the biggest reason why someone possibly looks at an alternate asset class is because there is some amount of limitations in the existing returns that they see in the existing asset classes, right? What happened in March of 2022 is that we said we cannot be subject to such a macro environment killing us to an extent where the whole business was shut down. Almost 60,000 students could not complete their education, and those macro environments ended up impacting the business drastically. We were involved in Bitcoin since 2017. Just look at how Bitcoin has given birth to blockchain as a technology and what happens to this technology going forward. So we got involved in 2017, and in around 2020 is Mr. Saylor was looking at Bitcoin on its balance sheet. I'm sure he went through his own regulatory challenges, but ultimately he did create a playbook in those 2 years. What we did in March of 2022 is that we went to the board and we told the board that this is so before understanding why we want to just invest in Bitcoin, we explained to them what is Bitcoin and why we think it is a technology of the future. And the capital that is being built on top of Bitcoin is going to be far superior than anything else. So we spent almost about 6 months navigating the conversation with our board, making them understand. And in March 2022, we took a small position allocating 25% of our surplus, investment surplus into Bitcoin. Once we did that, we were tracking it for most of 2022 and looking at how it reacts. We started adding small chunks into it. I'm sure that there is a lot of sound around the fact that there's a bear market, there's a bull market, but we said we're playing this out for the next 2 decades, or we're playing this out for the next 3 decades. That if we're going in this direction, then we're going for the ultra long term, not a 3-year horizon, not a 5-year horizon. We're saying ultra long term, right? Which possibly outlasts and creates a legacy for this business itself. So we did that up until 2023 beginning. And then in 2023, there were certain regulations that were coming in. There were certain IT structures that were coming into India. And we said, let's just hold back and look at how it's unfolding. A lot of the tax structures became a lot more simpler. And we said, okay, fine, this looks straightforward for the Ministry of Finance. Then let's go ahead and take a bigger position. In 2024 is when we started buying again. And in November 2024 is when we started saying this is our treasury reserve asset, similar to what MicroStrategy has done. So I think what is beautiful is that there is a precedent that is set by MicroStrategy. It's a playbook, it's an open source playbook that you can look at, and you can build your jurisdictional capabilities to adopt it in your country, which works beautifully well. So that's what we did.
And now at present day, how frequently does Jet King buy Bitcoin, or what is the anything you want to add on the capital structure,
Sure.
equity, debt, etc.?
Sure. So JetKing has a very large real estate portfolio. This real estate portfolio is something that we are looking to liquidate over time. What we are going to do is all of the real estate, or maybe almost 90% of the real estate, will be liquidated, and it will be converted into, of course, cash, and then that cash will be allocated into Bitcoin. After allocating certain amount of our operational business, which is the education business, which we will be pivoting into a Bitcoin education business. I'll tell you more about that at a later stage, but the thought was to allocate all of the real estate capital into Bitcoin and then take it from there. Once we finish doing that journey, which I anticipate to be at the next, say in the next 6 to 8 months, because real estate is an illiquid asset, it takes time to sell basically. And once that time is done, what we'll do is allocate that to Bitcoin. Once we do that, the idea was to issue, so again, play a similar playbook where we issue equity shares, and it will happen in the round of pref issues in the first go. My hope is that our regulators start looking at this move more in a more welcoming way. And the thought was to largely see that they are okay with the different instruments that we come up with. I anticipate the first 8 to 9 months, it is going to be largely an equity-driven financing round, and possibly in the financial year of next year is we're looking to touch about 150 Bitcoin on our balance sheet. Once we reach that scale, the idea was to get introduced in the National Stock Exchange and get certain derivative instruments out. Now, again, because the regulation is still evolutionary in India, I personally feel that a lot of the regulation will be a lot more clear by the end of the next financial year. So when I say the Indian financial year, it's April till March of next year. And once that is there, we get ourselves listed on the National Stock Exchange and create the right derivative products around it. So in a nutshell, this is the plan. Of course, this is all subject to certain approvals that we get from the regulators, but this is the roadmap that we've created for ourselves.
And how do you see Bitcoin evolving over the next few years, maybe even over the next 5 to 10 years?
Sure. So I would keep the conversation more from an India-centric approach, right? So today, if I was recently in a room of almost maybe around 200 guys who were part of this very prestigious school in the States, and they were ultra high net worth individuals. And there was someone who was talking about Bitcoin or crypto as an asset class. And with a show of hands, there was only 10% of the people who put their hands up to say they had some kind of exposure in this. So my point is that if the community at large thinks Bitcoin is an early asset, in India it is just being born. I personally feel while crypto has an adoption to some extent in India, Bitcoin as an asset class for a lot of individuals is just being born. So as and when there's a regulatory clarity that comes in the Indian ecosystem, I think there'll be a lot more takers. I think there's going to be so today only 12 to 14% of Indians invest in the stock market in India. Almost, I think that shift is coming towards Bitcoin eventually. And considering we have an equity-based Bitcoin business, there is a lot of exposure that people can take in this equity as well. So a lot of the regulatory clarity is what people are looking out for. And once that is clear, I think the uptick into Bitcoin will be will happen quite aggressively. If you see the trends, India generally adopts things slower. And I personally feel that data, mobile, internet, these came into the East, or in India for that matter, slightly slower than the West, right? And ultimately, there is a little bit of a time lag when they're adopting newer avenues of newer disruptions for that matter. So I think we're at that stage where in the next 1 or 2 years, 1 year at max, is when a lot of people will start taking in an aggressive position in Bitcoin.
And how do you approach the education piece of Bitcoin? I guess on one hand, the education of the other members of the corporation, but also anything that you want to touch on as far as the education piece in the future.
Sure, sure. So currently, the way we have our education structure is we have a lab capacity of, when I say lab capacity, we have about 50 classrooms across India. And these classrooms largely have an infrastructure, which is IT infrastructure. And we train them in ethical hacking, cloud computing, and other infrastructure management services. Now we're setting up, so there's two levels that we're looking at it from. One is a touch and feel level, wherein student can come in and experience, for example, a mining machine, right? And the idea was to set up an experiential center, which is possibly like for a placeholder name, I'm going to say a Bitcoin lab, wherein we create this structure where he comes in and sees the entire um, transaction taking place and the finality of the transaction, where he can experience Bitcoin in its real essence. So we're setting up two of these labs, one in Mumbai and one in Delhi. And existing students who can come in and start to learn and know and notice about what Bitcoin is. Once we set that up, the next stage is to create a BTC GPT model, right? And this BTC GPT model is largely an AI-driven bot, which helps a lot of students understand about Bitcoin in its rural languages. So India is, considering how diversified India is in terms of the languages that are spoken, the top 12 languages are what we are going to implement into. So English and Hindi is what we'll start with, and eventually it will have the top 12 languages, which is including Punjabi, which is including Telugu, Kannada, and all of that conversation students can have with this AI bot, which is going to be a cost-effective subscription that students can take. And this will effectively get them to understand what Bitcoin is. Personally, I feel there's a lot of bad actors, including exchanges and certain scams that have happened in India, that has given Bitcoin, unfortunately, a bad name, which should not be the case. Bitcoin's never been hacked. It's never scammed anyone per se, because the tech cannot. But the people around it have done that. So it needs a sense of that positive approach, wherein they go after Bitcoin from a different lens altogether, not just price or scam or something like that. I want us to be those spokesperson of people to go out and tell them what exactly is the technology, what was the intention, what Satoshi Nakamoto was looking to do, what was the intention, and simplify it to an extent where they can relate to it. So yeah, these two pieces are going to be the most exciting pieces in the next 3 to 6 months that we're looking to launch.
Awesome. And where can people find you and Jet King online?
Sure. So my X handle is Sid Bharwani, and all of the updates around this specific business is on jetking.org, and everything that we're doing in terms of this business is listed on this website. And if there is anyone who's looking to reach out on email, my email is sid@jetking.com. It's pretty straightforward.
Great. Sid Barwani, Chief Financial Officer at Jet King. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Tim. It was lovely talking to you.